Welcome to Finding Harmony in Marriage. Are you ready to discover 3 reasons that all couples have trouble seeing eye to eye? Well, my name is Connie Durham. I've been married over 40 years, and today I'm going to give you those 3 reasons. These 3 things cause most of the trouble in your marriage. For some of you, there may be big problems. Make sure you keep watching. But for others, it may be simpler and it may be simple misunderstandings just because of maybe your backgrounds or your personality styles. Stick with me to the end. Let's get started. First of all, I once talked to a young woman who married her Prince Charming. But before the honeymoon was over, anger, ridicule, and disgust was interjected into her every day. And that was for years. Is that you today? If it's not, there's still some great stuff for you to learn. But if that's you today, make sure you stay with me so you can figure this out. We only have one life to live, and we want to make it the best that we can. So let's figure out why. First of all families are different. Whenever I was a young married person, things went pretty well for me. And so I didn't realize that. But all families are different. There's past hurts in people's lives, there's wrong choices. Hey, we've all made a few of those, right? And when these things have happened, there's outraged, pinned up inside. People deal with outrage, frustration, and anger differently. And that's really what we're talking about. Different personality styles deal with things differently, but somehow it's going to come out one way or the other. So, this outrage of family differences and frustrations, past hurts, wrong choices, it brings on emotional outburst. It brings on people casting the blame onto the other person. Something's bothering them, and they make out like it's you. There's demeaning conversations. You know, when somebody talks down to you, it really hurts. But even the most confident person being talked down to and ridiculed through weeks, months, and years, they lose their confidence. So, why is this happening? Why is this happening in marriages and families? And so very much in this day and time. Well, when there's frustration, it's got to come out somehow. I mean, people get sick from it, they get angry, and they lash out at others. Sometimes it's abuse, but it's got to come out somehow. The frustration, the anger, it's got to come out somehow. It comes out through rage, self-pity, a low self-esteem, really weird behavior, things I've never seen before, depression, or even worse. Hurting people hurt others. You can stop to think about it. It might have been your parents. It might have been a best friend. It might have been an old boyfriend or an old girlfriend. But hurting people always hurt others. Well, hopefully for you, it's not this bad. But today I'm going to uncover the reasons most of us have challenges. Even if our marriage is good, we still have challenges. Most couples have misunderstandings. You're saying something, they're hearing it differently, and it's simply a misunderstanding, but it causes a lot of havoc. In mostly all marriages, we have a little discontentment. We're disconnected. We disconnect from our spouse. And if we think about anger and frustration, being talked down to, mistreated, we disconnect. The feelings of love go away when somebody is mean and cruel to you all the time. So, having trouble finding that peace that you desire in your marriage, a marriage requires time, it requires effort. You have to work at it. You have to cultivate it. You have to forgive and forget. And sometimes that's really hard to do. You have to be absolutely loyal to one another. But sometimes one partner's not so loyal. They're not so giving. They're not so kind. They're not so loving. And all we've just talked about is the reason why. It's a deeply embedded problem many people have, and they carry it into their relationship. Maybe they've had trouble in the past, or there was family differences and they want something different, but they simply don't know how to get it. Sometimes we lose sight of hope. I mean, even the most hopeful person, I'm a really hopeful person. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And so I can see the best in people. But at the same time, when so much time passes and you can't see any changes, you do start to lose hope. So there's three reasons most couples butt heads or even squash each other. Number one is we all bring baggage into our marriage. I mean, it might be simple things like small frustrations from high school or lack of confidence. It might be simple things, but many people bring in big baggage, and we're going to be looking at that. The second thing we're going to look at is we're simply wired differently. We all have different DNA, and I'm not talking about the color of your hair or your eyes or your skin, but we all have different DNA. It's literally we're all wired differently. Our personalities are different. Some personalities complement each other and lift each other, while other personalities squash each other. Now, when you take the baggage we bring into our marriage and our different personalities, these two things develop our expectations. These two things develop our expectations. And we all expect what we're used to. What were your parents like? What were your brother and sisters like? We expect whatever it is we have seen in life and what we're used to getting. So let's take a look at this. First of all, my name is Connie, and I am the host of The Extraordinary Marriage because that's what we want to work towards. That's what we want to have. No, nobody's marriage is perfect. But you know what? We either are beaten down by our frustrations or we learn from them and we move on. I'm the mom of three grown kids, all married, and I am the nana of 14 grandkids. I know I don't look old enough for 14 grandkids, right? You know, the secret to having grandkids is not even thinking about grandkids, poof, and they just kind of happen. Well, there's a little more story in that, but I'm not going to give all that today. But you know, even my kids have had challenges in marriage because we all come from different families. We have different habits and values. These things cause challenges. All right. I'm a lover of God, family, nature, dance, music, travel, and all things creative. I love coming to you and helping you with this. I have a passion for people. I have a degree in music. I have 21 years in leadership. And in 2004, I was certified in human behavior styles. And that talks about how we're all wired differently. All right. So I'm bringing to you today my passion for marriages and families. Why? Because I had a good upbringing. I married the right person. Our personalities complement each other. But when my kids got married, I started to realize that different families bring in different values, different beliefs, different habits, different traditions. And you know what? You have to figure out how to bring all that together, right? All right. And with that, that brought me happy couples equal happier kids. One of the families in our extended family had some challenges in life. And we ended up with their two boys for 2 or 3 years. And I realized during that time, I was naive. I didn't know anything. But I realized during that time that so many couples have trouble in marriage and they pour that out onto their kids. So if you don't figure out how to get it fixed, you pour it out into your kids. So my motto is happy couples equal happier kids. And if you have children, if you won't do something for yourself, you will do it for your kids. So let's look at this. The scary truth, the scary, hurtful truths of marriage are kept behind closed doors because nobody wants to talk about them. Nobody wants to share them. You might share them with the best friend, or you might share them with one of your parents. But most of the time, people are ashamed and they want to look like they have a great marriage and they don't share it with anyone. And so they just stay in the pain. They just stay in the pain, stay in the trouble, and put a smiling face on when they go out in public. And they do this until it's too late and everything falls apart. You know, I believe there is hope and there is a method to people learning how to get along. There is hope and there is a method to people learning how to get along. So I want you to start out today thinking about your relationship because that's why we're here, right? So I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to give yourself a 1 to a 10, 10 being the highest. Yeah, we're great in that. And then I want you to, I'll actually attach to your email this list so that you can look at it again because you won't have time to write down everything and mark your marks here. So we're going to add them up at the end and let's see where we come out. So number 1, from 1 to 10, 1 being, oh no, we're no good at this, to 10 being, we got this covered. Number 1, I openly share my thoughts, dreams, and feelings. Number 2, 1 or a 10, 1 to 10, my spouse and I are best friends. You might have it covered if you're good on those first 2 things. Number 3, my spouse and I frequently have arguments. How frequently is that? Give yourself a 1 to a 10. Number 4, we both forgive and move on quickly. A 1 to a 10. How expectant do I feel my spouse is? So this is about your spouse. Do they expect a lot out of you? Do they, how do you, are they very expectant or they're not too expectant? They're pretty easygoing on that. Number 6, how expectant am I? Do I expect a lot out of my spouse? Perfection or just a little bit of help or, how expectant are you? Number 7, work, chores, and family are divided equally. 1 to 10. That's a pretty easy one to answer and one that, if they are not, causes a little bit of resentment if one person's doing everything. 8, my spouse is complimentary and appreciative. Count your blessings, right? Complimentary and appreciate. Give yourself a 1 to a 10. Number 9, I am complimentary and appreciative for all he does or she does, according to who's watching this. I'm complimentary and appreciative of all he does. So, are you appreciative? These are big things in your marriage that develop admiration of each other, appreciation of each other. And then let's look at, do you laugh often? Do you laugh often? Do you know that laughter takes away a lot of stress? I mean, it's important to laugh and have joy in life. We make decisions together. We make decisions together. When you come together and you get married, here we go back to, it's according to where you come from. In some families, just the husband makes all the decisions. I mean, like that's 1950s, I think, right? Makes all the decisions. But in this day and time, usually men and women bring their knowledge together and make decisions together. But that's not always so. All right. So do you make decisions together? And that means you're talking it out and figuring it out, right? A 1 to a 10. And then we put each other first over our parents, kids, and friends. This is something that needs to happen at the very beginning of your relationship, your marriage. You put each other first. I mean, we want to be first with our spouse, right? First with our spouse. We might have 8 siblings and we don't know who is first, right? Well, it's kind of supposed to be equal. But when it comes to our spouse, we're supposed to put each other first. That's godly, actually. It's in the Bible. Put each other first. And that takes care of a lot of other things. 1 to 10. And then lastly, we have excellent communication with each other. A 1 to 10. Now, stop and take a look just at your numbers up through there. And, how many tens do you have? I think I have 14, I think it's 13 questions, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 questions. And so, you could have 130 points. But stop and look. Do you have a lot of tens? A lot of sevens? Do you have a lot of twos? Uh-oh, right? So kind of giving yourself, rate yourself and figure kind of where is my relationship? Some of us have really high expectations and we expect perfection. And then others have very low expectations. They don't expect much. Well, all my life, I could wear any kind of shoe. I could wear 4-inch platforms. I know you're thinking, what has this got to do with it? I'm taking it there. I could wear 3-inch spike heels. I could wear Walmart tennis shoes and sandals, any old sandals. I could wear whatever kind of shoes, cheap shoes, whatever kind of shoes. And I never even thought about name brands or, shoes that had a good arch or any of that kind of thing. I taught ballet for years, for 21 years. And that means I grew from the time I grew up from the time I was 6, taking dance lessons, and then I taught for 21 years. And my feet, I took them for granted. They always were good feet for me. But as the years have gone on, my feet have become a little unhappy. And so I'm a penny pincher. I don't like to spend money on things like shoes. I like for them to be pretty and I like to have good shoes, good looking shoes. But I don't really care if they're name brands, and that might not be your thing, but I don't care if they're name brands. And so I don't like to spend a lot of money there. But let me tell you, when my feet started giving me trouble and I had trouble walking long distances or staying on my feet, I began to seek answers and look for answers because it was no longer spending money on my shoes. It was investing in my feet, investing in comfort, being able to hike and walk and go on trips and enjoy life. It was an investment. And sometimes things change. There's spending money and there is investing. And yeah, I had to spend like over $100 on my tennis shoes. That hurt really bad. But let me tell you what was good. My feet being happy and me being able to do all the things that I like to do. Investing in shoes that kept my feet happy. All right, so let's get to the meat of our program here. What is in your suitcase? I bet you never thought about it. But I bet if you're having trouble in your marriage, there are times you're like, is it me? What am I doing? Well, typically, it's not the person who's seeking help. Typically, the person who's causing the most trouble is not going to step out and look for help. But what is in our suitcase? Think about what's in your suitcase and think about what's in your spouse's suitcase. What did you guys bring into your marriage that you're not paying attention to now? You're only thinking about the here and now, and you're not thinking about what has happened to each of you in the past. Were your parents always fighting? Did somebody have substance abuse? Maybe you didn't get all the bills paid because they were buying drugs or alcohol or that kind of thing. Was there a revolving door for one of your parents? Maybe they came and went, or maybe one of your parents wasn't married or was divorced. There's divorce in your family, and there was revolving boyfriends or girlfriends coming in and out. You know, do you and your spouse have similar values? and beliefs? What's important to you? Do you have similar hopes and dreams? We meet our spouse, we start dating and we just see all the good and we're excited. And sometimes we forget to look a little further and we're blind. Maybe people warned you before you got married, but you're blind by love. You're blinded by love, right? So, what is in your suitcase? What kind of baggage have you brought into the marriage? Kind of baggage has your spouse brought into the marriage? We could even think about what kind of garbage. And garbage starts to stink. Do you have anything stinking in your marriage? The second thing is, are you simply wired different? So, first we think about the things that we have brought into our marriage and our past. And then the second thing is, let's look at a few things today and recognize, are you simply wired differently? Are you opposite? Are you button heads? Are you squashing each other? You might not realize it. And it's kind of like football. The offense is moving forward down the field. But when things start to go wrong in our marriage, we find ourselves on the defense and we're being pushed back on the field. And unless we get that offense back in there to figure out how to move forward, we're stuck. So maybe one of you is energizing, you're energized by conversation and friends, and the other feels drained when you're around a lot of people. That simply means one of you may be a people person and loves a crowd, and the other one needs peace and quiet, and they don't like to be around a lot of people. Well, that can divide you because maybe you want to go to the family get together and your spouse doesn't want to go. One talks about everything and the other listens. This is good. But that person doesn't share. That mean that means one person is wide open and tells it all, is an open book, and the other person is a closed book. You don't know what they're thinking. They sit quietly. You don't know if they're happy or they're upset, and they just don't show any emotions. Maybe one of you is very satisfied, easygoing, and the other one is always searching, never satisfied. Working together and learning about each other increases the odds of winning together. And isn't that what we all want to do? We want to win in marriage. Why? Because, we go out into the world and we work, we shop, we go to church, we go on vacation. But no matter what we do, we go back home. And that's our refuge. And we want to learn how to get along together. So let's go over. There are 4 personality styles. I'm going to give you just a little bit on this. This is actually what I teach. It's human behavior styles. And some people, get along great with everybody. Some don't get along with very many people at all. And sometimes we crush each other. We frustrate each other and we don't know why. And once you learn the communication styles, the communication secrets, I teach a class, it's called Communication Secrets for Marriage. Once you start to learn those, you have a lot of aha moments. Maybe some problems that you're causing and you didn't know it, and some things that maybe your spouse does and it's not personal. We take it personal. So, 4 types of people. The first type of person, see if this is you or see if it's your spouse. The first type of person is cautious. I mean, they're careful in everything that they do. They're a bit of a perfectionist, maybe not in all areas, but in many areas. Maybe it's in keeping the house perfect. They're very diplomatic. And so they're not going to tell you straightforward what's going on. They're going to beat around the bush just a little bit. They're very diplomatic. And here's a big one. They follow the rules. Now, I like to tell a story whenever I'm teaching communication secrets for marriage. I like to tell a story think about this. If you saw let's say you're going to the courthouse in your town, and you got to the courthouse, and there's a big front yard in front of that courthouse, and there's a sidewalk, and it frames the front yard. And down the center of the yard is the sidewalk that leads up to the front door of the courthouse. It's a big, giant field. So, are you going to follow the sidewalk? It's going to kind of go all the way around the corner and then back up to the courthouse. Are you going to follow the sidewalk? Or are you going to cut across the yard? The people who follow the sidewalk, they look at the people who cross across the yard and they're like, "Ah, look at them. They are on the grass. Don't they see the sidewalk? You're supposed to stay on the sidewalk." And the people who cut through the grass think, good grief, I'm going to take a shortcut across the grass. It's a long ways around the sidewalk. And they think about the people who are on the sidewalk. They think, oh my goodness, they're walking all the way around. Well, I'm cutting through the grass. And that's the difference between people who follow the rules. That doesn't mean people who cut through the grass don't follow important rules. You might be saying that is an important rule. I just want you to see the difference in people and the difference in how we think. When we're looking at behavior styles, we're looking at how people think and how they act differently and how they respond differently. And we're going to look at how they respond in just a minute. So, the second type of people are enthusiastic people. They're friendly, they're talkative, they're trusting, but they buck the rules. Yes, they are the people who walked across the grass at the town courtyard. They walked across the grass, but they're enthusiastic, talkative, they're very open, fun loving, and they're pretty easy to spot once you start to learn the personality styles. The third type of people, human behavior style, is this is those people that are really competitive. They're the PTO president, the president of the company, the chief, of police officers. They are competitive and they are going to work hard as they move up the ladder at work. They are demanding. They're demanding of themselves, and so they're demanding of everyone else. And this fits right in. And so they're impatient. They're honking their horn. You're in the car and somebody honks their horn because you haven't moved as quick as that light turned. And they are a decision maker. I mean, they like to make the decisions. The fourth type of people are really easygoing. They're loyal, cooperative. They're that person who always says yes when you ask for help with something. You always know that you can go to them for help. But they are indecisive. They don't really like to make decisions. Anybody in your house like that? Is that you? Is that your spouse? Let's say you're going out to a restaurant and you're like, hey, where do you want to go? And they're like, well, where do you want to go? If you're both easygoing and loyal and cooperative, then you can't decide where to go because you both want to please each other. And these are the things you start to learn when you study the communication styles. There's a lot more to it than this, but this is the basic. But let's stop here and let's look. Whenever we are frustrated, do you know that we all show stress differently? We all show stress differently. And I am not a person who lambast anybody. I'm not going to let you have it, even though maybe sometimes I might like to because I'm so frustrated I can't stand it. So, guess what happens? I learned as I studied this that my frustration comes out in sarcasm. Well, sarcasm, even though I'm not lambasting anybody, it can get me in trouble because I'm really sarcastic. And I didn't realize it until I'd started studying this. And once you realize, then you know that I don't really mean it the way it sounds. I'm being sarcastic because remember I said, hey, when there's trouble, It's got to get out somehow, right? And so for me, it comes out as sarcasm. For some people, their stress comes out as they're really a poor listener and they won't listen. And maybe you're talking to them and you're like, "Are you hearing what I'm saying?" And they just refuse to listen. They won't listen. Some people have the turtle effect. They duck their head in and they just pretend like nothing's going on. They don't talk about it. They get quiet. And that's not good because it's like having garbage and eventually it's going to smell and something's going to happen. I knew a person who, you might say they had the turtle effect where they had a real big challenge in their marriage. There was a lot of anger from their spouse, and their spouse was charming on the outside. But what happened was maybe they had stress at work, frustration over paying the bills, maybe the car was in disrepair. Whatever the problem was, they were charming in public, but when they came home, they let it all rip on their spouse. And their spouse had the turtle effect. So there's stress all around them, but they just kind of ducked their head in and they didn't fight. They didn't say anything. They just let their spouse yell at them. Well, one day they started to plan how they were going to leave that situation because they were not going to confront it. And so eventually they made plans to leave. And that spouse came home one day and their loved one was packed up, had an apartment, and they were ready to go. And the person who was doing all the yelling and had the frustration and the anger, they didn't even know what happened. They were like, because their spouse never said anything because they had the turtle effect. They kept it all to themselves, all pinned up, and they didn't share until one day it was too late and they were out of there. So that's the turtle effect. They're still stressed. You just can't see it. And then some people are submissive and undecided. Like they're just quiet and they don't say anything. Actually, as I look at this, I realize I should have put another one on there. A really big one. I don't know how I missed it. And that is anger. And that's like the person who is married to the person with turtle effect. They had anger. Anger is a big way people express stress. And that means no matter what's going on in their life that causes them frustration or stress or anger, they get mad about it and they explode on everyone else. If they're able to hold this at work, yeah, you do see it at work. If they're able to hold this at work, they don't hold it at home. And at home, you get all the stress and anger from everything else that is bothering them. So I can't write it on the screen, but look at it. It's there, anger. And actually, the person who becomes a poor listener, they're the person who gets very angry whenever they are stressed. So you can learn to get along when you recognize that there are problems. You got to recognize there's problems. You can't have the turtle effect and hide your head forever. You got to recognize there's problems. When you recognize it, then you begin to resolve it. Resolving it may take a little while. It's not instant. The bigger the problems, the longer it takes to resolve it. But how long do you want to stay in the circumstances of not getting along with your spouse? Once you figure it out little by little by little, you will resolve it and then you can reset your relationship. I was talking to somebody on the extraordinary marriage and they told me how many years they had been married. I think it was like 25 or 30. And they said only 14 happy ones, only 14 happy years of marriage out of 25 or 30. And that's because they spent years trying to figure it out. Their family differences, their value differences, their challenges and conflicts caused by different personalities. They spent years. All right. So, number 3, we're going to go back to number 1 and 2. Number 1 was that you're wired differently. That's different behavior styles, different personality styles. You react to stress differently. You refuel differently. You expect different things from each other. Who you are determines how you see others. Who you are determines how you see others. It determines what you expect from other people. You might expect more from other people than you expect from yourself. Or you may be one of those people, you expect a lot from yourself, so you expect a lot from others. I think one thing my mom taught me when I was a kid, she taught me to be the best that I could be, to do the best by people that I could do. But she also taught me that don't expect too much from other people. If you don't expect too much from other people, you won't be disappointed. And I really kind of always lived by that. Luckily, I married a man who expected a lot from himself, and I expect a lot from myself. But we're all wired differently, and how and who we are, our personality styles, we expect other people to do the same as we do. It's kind of like, um, you may relate to this. Like your father was a doctor, and so he expected you to be a doctor. He expected you to go to all that school and be a doctor, but you weren't interested in being a doctor. Maybe your mom was a school teacher, and so she thought you would be a school teacher. See, we can't expect other people to do what we do. They've got to be able to make their own choices. All right, so who you are determines how you see others. And we are all wired differently. And then the next thing was different family values, habits, and beliefs. Different family values, habits, and beliefs. These two things, how you're wired and how you were raised, all your past history, both of these things developed your expectations, because you can't expect anything in life that you've not seen. I had a girl in California talking about money. And what she talked about was the fact that people who've never bought a house, maybe nobody in their family had ever bought a house and they had only rented, it never occurred to them that they could buy a house. They could buy a house by working hard, paying their bills, having good credit, and deciding that when they got that loan on their house, that they would make that payment every month. They could buy a house. But because they had never seen it, they didn't know that it was possible. They had never seen it, so they didn't know it was possible. We can only be what we have seen in life. We can't be anything we've never seen someone else be. It's like having a mentor. Your parents were your mentor. Is that what you want to be like? Your college friend that you hung out with. Hey, they're kind of a mentor. You hung out with them. We're just like the people we hang out with, right? And so we have expectations upon our personality style. Some people expect more from other people than others, and upon our life experiences. What have we experienced in life? Are we getting the same things our parents got? This is also where when you marry into another family, sometimes you don't get what you got in your family. It might be better or it might be worse, but you got to pay attention so you can decide what you're getting. Finding harmony in marriage. You know, did you learn as a kid accountability? Were you truthful, committed, respectful, thoughtful, helpful, giving? If you witnessed all of these things, then you probably are a lot of these things. Is this what you see in your spouse? What you see in your spouse's family? Does this describe the friends that you're around? If you don't have these things, you can still get them. You just have to work at it and you have to decide that you want it. You only know what you've experienced in the past. So sometimes we lose sight of hope. I'm an optimist. It even happens to me. I work hard towards something, and when nothing's happening, or it appears like nothing's happening, sometimes there's things going on and you don't know. I start to lose hope. You only have so much energy. So let's go back over it. 3 reasons most couples butt heads and even squash each other. We all bring in some baggage into our marriage. If it's garbage, it starts to smell. We're simply wired differently, and we each have different expectations. Well, when I was a little girl, I was oblivious to all these things. I was oblivious that there was trouble in the world because my parents protected me. I was oblivious to um, blended families. I was oblivious to divorce until I met one friend. I remember one friend in elementary school. I lived in California, and her mom had been married 3 times. Well, I didn't realize exactly what that was then, except that sometimes she wasn't quite as happy. And I remember being in a store and she stole something from the store. Yeah. So sometimes we show out in different ways when there's a lot of havoc in our family. But I was oblivious. And this is a picture of my sister and I. I'm the older one. I was the oldest. And then my little picture's on top of it here. Oops. Whenever I started dating my husband, we started dating in high school. And, there was a lot of hope and excitement. I mean, I was involved in chorus in high school, all the drama productions. My favorite things were PE and lunch because I got to talk and spend time with people. That tells a lot about me, but I did okay on my grades. But my husband and I were both in chorus, and we started dating in high school, the very end of high school. And, those were glorious times. We weren't responsible for very much. I worked at my dance studio, and I think he worked at Bonanza, a restaurant. So we had started working and that kind of thing. But we were hopeful and excited. Everything in the world. He came from a good family, had a good childhood, and so did I. Everybody doesn't get that though, do they? Well, whenever I started having kids, we started having a family, I was in awe. Life was beautiful. The creation of babies and children, I loved being a mom. I loved taking care of my kids, protecting my kids, raising my kids, giving them opportunities, pouring into them the values and the beliefs that I had learned as a kid. But when my family started to expand, here's my family today, the bubble was burst. I started realizing the troubles that people brought into marriage from their families. Maybe they didn't even know they had troubles. Most of the time, we're just unaware. We keep putting out the fire without figuring out what's starting the fire. I was enlightened. I kind of wish I wasn't. But if I wasn't enlightened, I wouldn't be here with you today because it is my passion to help people in marriage. I became aware of many, many of the challenges. And instead of being beat down by them, I have learned by them. And that's why I'm here with you today. In relationships, receiving is easy, giving is much more difficult. It's similar to the differences between building something and tearing it down. It takes a skilled craftsman much time to build a beautiful chair. But just like relationships, we built a beautiful relationship. We're dating, having fun, and laughing and encouraging each other. It takes no skill whatsoever to smash that chair in moments. It's as simple as for the young woman that I mentioned at the beginning of this today, it looked like it was beautiful. Maybe there was a few red flags. Maybe those red flags were ignored. But then once the knot was tied, everything immediately started to seem different. There are two good things in life: freedom of thought and freedom of action. Freedom of thought and freedom of action. And here's where I'm taking you with that. The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation. I know, don't throw things at me. You're thinking, yeah, it is. But the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. But beware of the thoughts you are thinking. Whenever we're in a situation and everything is frustrating, we're hurt, our spouse explodes all their crap on us, we're frustrated, we feel helpless. It's really hard by yourself to find your way out of that. But the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation. You can figure a way around it. You can find things that bring happiness to you, fill your cup, friends, family. Lean on your friends and family. The person who sends out positive thoughts activates the world around them positively and draws back to himself positive results. The person who sends out positive thoughts activates the world around him and positively draws back to himself positive results. But it's kind of like that football team. I'm not a football lover, but my husband is. That football team, when they're on the offense, it's positive. The fans are cheering. But whenever they're on the defense, the fans are quiet and they're feeling helpless. Positive results. That's what we all want. And so we have to work on those positive thoughts. And nothing happens until the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change. I mean, that goes like when we need to lose weight. Nothing happens until the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change. And that means changing what you're eating. I can talk about this from experience, unfortunately. But when it comes to your marriage, nothing happens until the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change. So today you have two choices. I hope you have learned something from this presentation. I hope I have poured into you hope. I hope I have poured into you enlightenment of what's causing the problem. And you have two choices. You can do nothing and everything stays the same. And we could say that's the easier choice, but it's really the harder one. Do nothing and everything stays the same. Or you could figure out how to get help. And that might be by letting me help you. It might be by going to your pastor at church. It might be by confiding in a friend or a family member. But I told you I have a method of helping you. And it's really figuring out the core of your DNA, the core of your behavior style and your spouse's behavior style, and how you may be revving each other wrong. Let's see if I can talk right. All right. So, getting over those unexpected hurdles may not be exactly enjoyable, but ultimately, I believe that such challenges and the solutions we find give us more confidence. They teach us with common sense and determination that we can turn what looks like a disaster into a triumph. And that's from Martha Stewart. And that could go to a lot of different things. But I have a 40-minute free insights. It's called Fresh Insights because when you've been having challenges for a long time, or maybe you just got married and you're having challenges, get help now. Don't wait for 5, 10, 15, 20 years to pass. Get a fresh insight to the challenges that you have, somebody to talk to, somebody to lean on, someone to support you. You are not alone. So you can go to theextraordinarymarriage.com/fresh insights free session. It is a 40-minute session. And somebody asked me the other day, are you still giving those away free? And I'm like, yes, because I have a passion for marriage. I have a passion for families, and I want to help you. I help people through the Extraordinary Marriage podcast. You can find that on Spotify and on Apple or on my site, The Extraordinary Marriage. If you go to my podcast page on The Extraordinary Marriage, you'll find an aqua blue button at the top right-hand corner. And it gives you a chance to talk to me. All you have to do is click it and fill out your name, how many years you've been married, and promise me that you'll come. Because you wouldn't believe that sometimes people commit to something and then they leave you hanging, but I know you wouldn't do that. So All I ask is that you fill out the information, pick a time, mark it on your calendar, and then let's chat. I'm an open book. I'm a real person. I have 3 kids, 14 grandkids. I have a big family. I've lived many years of life. I've been married over 40 years, and I have a method of understanding yourself and understanding your spouse. But you can talk to me for free as long as there's space open. All right. Fresh insights for marriage at theextraordinarymarriage.com. And you'll find it in several places, but you can go to the podcast page and it's a button in the top right hand corner. All you got to do is click it. My name is Connie Durham. I am the host of the Extraordinary Marriage Podcast, and I hope you'll join me there free. And I hope if you need more than you have heard today, that you will go and commit and make a change. Because if you do nothing, everything stays the same. And you have choices. And there's support out there for you. So it's up to you. Thank you for listening today.